Did you know that the process whereby iron sheets and other structures made of iron turn brown is a chemical change? Old iron nails are brown while new ones are usually shiny. What happened? In time, metals such as iron change due to some chemical reactions. This chemical reaction is known as rusting. In other words, you may say corrosion. In order to understand deeper into what really happens, we'll need to carry out an experiment. For the purposes of this video, we'll just describe the experiment. In this experiment, we're going to need test tubes, nails, some water, calcium chloride, anhydrous calcium chloride, and some salt. With these apparatus, set up the following. In the first test tube, let us name it test tube A. You put in a nail and you add some water until it is all covered, and then you just add a cork to close it up. In the second test tube, let us call it tube B, you need to boil the water first before you add it in the test tube with the nail, and then you cover it with some oil. In the third test tube, you need to heat the test tube when it is empty to dry it, and then add some calcium chloride and ensure that all the moisture is removed. You need to have dry air inside, and you cork it up with a cork. Lastly, you just take the nail and put some salty water in it, as shown in this test tube D. You will need to ensure that no air can enter the test tubes by ensuring that you have fastened the cork for each test tube in order to create a microclimate within the test tube. Leave the setup for about 5 days. After 5 days, you need to come back and observe and record your observations. After 5 days, the following observations will be made. The iron nail in tube A and tube D will have rusted. However, the rusting in the iron nail in tube D will be more intense. In order to explain these changes, in test tube A, we have the presence of oxygen, which is in air and water. The air dissolves in water, and the iron nail reacts with the oxygen to form iron 3 oxide. And then iron 3 oxide reacts with the water to form hydrated iron 3 oxide. Hydrated iron 3 oxide is rust. In test tube D, there was still the presence of oxygen in air that dissolved in the salty water, and the reaction of iron and oxygen took place to form iron 3 oxide, and then water reacted with iron 3 oxide to form hydrated iron 3 oxide. However, the rusting here in test tube D was more intense because the salty conditions accelerate rusting. In test tube B and C, there was no rusting. For test tube B, boiling the water drives out any air dissolved in it, and therefore the iron nail does not have any oxygen to react with, so there was no rusting. The process cannot take place because of the absence of oxygen. The oil layer added on top is to prevent the re-entry of air through dissolving into the water. Finally, in test tube C, there was no water since the air in the test tube was dry, and we added some anhydrous calcium chloride to ensure that any bit of moisture present would be absorbed by anhydrous calcium chloride. And hence, since there was no water, iron could not rust because rust is hydrated iron 3 oxide. So iron could not rust in this case. From this, we can conclude that for rusting to occur, there is need to have the presence of both water and oxygen. In this case, oxygen is dissolved in air. It is also important to note that salty conditions accelerate or increase the rate of rusting. Also, acidic conditions usually increase the rate of rusting. It is also very interesting to find that vehicles or cars and machines situated in coastal regions usually rust faster as compared to those that are in other areas. In the coastal regions, we find that the water usually has dissolved salts, and hence the acceleration of rusting occurs. In other regions, which are such as the highlands, the water is not salty and therefore rusting is much slower compared to coastal regions. Can you guess or give examples of some coastal regions in Kenya and also some examples of highlands in Kenya? You will find that cars in the coastal regions rust faster as compared to those in the other regions. To conclude the experiment of rusting takes place when iron reacts with oxygen to form iron 3 oxide. Iron 3 oxide in turn reacts with water to form hydrated iron 3 oxide, which is rust. In order to summarize these two reactions in one equation, we can write iron reacts with oxygen and water to form hydrated iron 3 oxide.